In the quiet space before dawn, when the sky is still a deep and gentle blue, and the stars hang softly above the dark outline of the earth, there is a stillness along the wide and ancient river that has not yet been touched by the noise of the day. And in this stillness, the land of Egypt rests as it has rested for countless mornings, breathing slowly beneath the fading night. The Nile lies stretched across the land like a long, calm ribbon, its surface barely moving, reflecting the last faint lights of the stars, as if holding on to the night just a little longer. And along its banks, the earth is dark and rich, damp from the quiet presence of water, carrying with it the promise of another day of work, of routine, of simple living that follows the same rhythm again and again. Not far from the river, in a small village made of sun-dried mud bricks, where the walls are smooth but uneven, and the roofs are flat and simple, a man lies resting on a woven mat, his body still and his breath slow, wrapped lightly in linen that is softened over time, and around him the room is quiet except for the faint sound of wind brushing against the outer walls. The air inside the house is cool, holding on to the night's calm, and the scent of earth and straw lingers gently, mixed with the faint trace of last evening's cooking fire, now long extinguished. And though the man does not move yet, there is a quiet awareness beginning to form within him, as if his body already understands that the day will soon begin. Outside, the first signs of morning begin to gather in the sky, not all at once, but slowly, as a thin line of pale light forms along the horizon, stretching wider with each passing moment, and the darkness begins to soften, not disappearing, but gently stepping aside to make room for the coming day. Within the small house, the man shifts slightly, his hand moving across the woven surface beneath him, feeling its rough but familiar texture, and his eyes open slowly, not with urgency, but with a calm acceptance, as if waking is simply another part of the steady pattern that shapes his life. He does not rise immediately, but instead remains still for a moment, listening to the quiet around him, noticing the faint sounds that begin to emerge as the village slowly wakes, the distant movement of another person, the soft murmur of early voices, the quiet shuffle of feet on packed earth, all blending together into a gentle beginning. When he finally sits up, his movements are unhurried, careful, and practiced, as though each motion has been repeated so many times that it no longer requires thought, and he reaches for a piece of linen cloth, wrapping it around his body in a simple way that allows him to move freely in the work that lies ahead. The floor beneath him is cool and firm, and as he stands, he stretches slightly, not in a dramatic way, but just enough to wake his muscles, to prepare them for the steady labor that will fill the hours of the day. And in this small act, there is no resistance, only quiet readiness. He steps outside into the early light, and the air greets him with a soft warmth that is just beginning to build, still gentle now, but carrying within it the certainty that the sun will soon rise fully and bring with it the stronger heat of the day. The village around him is coming to life in the same slow and steady way, with other workers emerging from their homes, some speaking quietly, others simply moving in silence, each person following their own familiar path, yet all sharing in the same rhythm that binds them together. There are no sudden movements, no sharp sounds, only the calm unfolding of another day that is much like the ones that came before, and in this sameness there is a kind of quiet comfort, a sense that everything is as it should be. The man walks toward a small clay vessel near the entrance of his home, dipping his hands into the cool water, letting it run over his skin, washing away the last traces of sleep, and he lifts some of the water to his face, closing his eyes briefly as it touches him, refreshing but gentle.
Nearby, someone begins to grind grain using a stone, the slow, steady sound of it forming a soft rhythm that blends with the morning air, and the smell of fresh flour begins to rise, subtle but warm, hinting at the simple meal that will soon be prepared. The man's stomach is not empty in a demanding way, but there is an awareness of hunger, quiet and patient, and he steps back inside for a moment, where a small portion of bread remains from the previous day, slightly firm now, but still good, still enough. He breaks the bread with his hands, eating slowly, without haste, each bite simple and familiar, and there is no thought of variety or change, only the steady nourishment that allows him to continue his work, day after day. When he finishes, he steps outside again, the light now growing stronger, the sky shifting into softer shades of gold and pale blue, and the sun begins to rise more clearly, its warmth spreading across the land, touching the tops of the buildings, the surface of the river, the open fields beyond. The fields stretch out in quiet rows, their soil dark and ready, shaped by hands that have worked them for generations, and beyond them the Nile continues its calm journey, always present, always moving, though so slowly it seems almost still. The man begins to walk toward his place of work, his feet moving along a path that is worn into the ground from years of use, each step familiar, each turn expected, and though nothing about the path is new, it does not feel dull or empty, but simply steady. Along the way, he passes others who walk in the same direction, and though they may nod or speak softly, there is no need for long conversation, as each person understands the day ahead, understands the work, understands the quiet effort that will fill the hours. The sun rises a little higher, and the shadows begin to shorten, and the air grows warmer, still gentle, still manageable, and the sounds of the village begin to fade behind them as the open land takes their place. There is a calm in this movement, a shared understanding that does not need words, and the man continues forward, his mind not crowded with thoughts, but resting in the simple awareness of what must be done. Soon the place of work comes into view, not grand or distant, but a part of the land itself, where tools rest against the ground, where the soil shows the marks of previous labor, and where the day's tasks wait quietly, unchanged. He does not pause when he arrives, nor does he rush, but simply steps into his place as though he had never left, reaching for the tools he knows so well, their shapes familiar to his hands, their weight expected. And the day has begun, not with noise or urgency, but with a gentle unfolding, like the slow rising of the sun itself. And as the first moments of work begin, the rhythm of the land continues, steady and unbroken. And in this quiet beginning, the pattern of life carries on, just as it did yesterday, and the day before, and countless days before that, stretching back through time like the river itself, flowing without end.
The tools rest where they have always rested, leaning gently against the earth, their wooden handles worn smooth by years of steady use. And as the man reaches down to lift one into his hands, there is a quiet familiarity in the motion, as though the tool itself belongs not just to the land, but to him and to all those who have worked here before. The soil beneath his feet is soft in some places and firm in others, shaped by the slow retreat of the river's waters in past seasons, leaving behind a dark richness that holds life within it. And as he presses his foot down, he can feel the slight give of the ground, a subtle reminder of the Nile's presence, even when it is not in sight. He begins his work without any signal or command, simply joining the rhythm that has already started around him, where other workers move in quiet coordination, each one focused on their own task, yet all connected through the shared pace of movement, the gentle repetition of effort that fills the morning hours.
The tool enters the soil with a soft, steady motion, breaking the surface, turning it slightly, preparing it for what will come next, and he repeats this action again and again, not quickly, not slowly, but at a pace that feels natural, a pace that his body understands without needing to think. The sun continues its rise, and its warmth begins to settle more firmly across the land, touching his shoulders, his arms, the back of his neck. But it is not yet harsh, not yet heavy, only a quiet presence that grows little by little, just as it does every day. Around him there are soft sounds that form the background of the morning, the light scraping of tools against soil, the occasional call of a bird passing overhead, the distant murmur of water moving along the river's edge, and these sounds do not interrupt the calm, but instead deepen it, creating a steady, peaceful rhythm. From time to time he pauses, not out of exhaustion, but simply to shift his position, to take a slow breath, to let his eyes move across the land for a brief moment. And in these pauses there is no sense of hurry, no pressure to move faster, only the quiet understanding that the work will continue as it always does. The other workers nearby follow similar patterns, their movements unhurried, their faces calm, and though they do not speak much, there is a shared presence among them, a quiet companionship that does not need words to be felt. The earth begins to change under their hands, small sections becoming more even, more prepared, shaped carefully by repeated motion, and though the change is gradual, almost unnoticeable from one moment to the next, it builds slowly over time, just as it has always done. The man adjusts his grip on the tool, feeling the familiar pressure against his palm, the slight roughness of the wood, and he continues, each movement blending into the next, forming a continuous flow that carries him through the morning. The light grows brighter, the sky now fully open, stretching wide and clear above the land, and the last traces of the early morning coolness begin to fade, replaced by a gentle warmth that settles into the air and the ground alike. Somewhere nearby, a voice speaks softly, not loud enough to break the calm, only enough to be heard by those closest, and there is a brief response, equally quiet, and then the silence returns, not empty, but full in its own quiet way. Time moves forward, though it is not measured in moments or counted in hours, but felt instead through the slow change of light, the gradual warmth of the sun, the steady rhythm of the body at work, and in this way the morning unfolds without needing to be marked. The man's breathing remains steady, his movements consistent, and there is a kind of ease within the repetition, a familiarity that allows his mind to rest even as his body continues its task, and in this state there is a quiet peace. The smell of the earth rises gently as it is turned, a deep and natural scent, slightly damp, slightly warm, and it mixes with the faint dryness of the air, creating a subtle presence that lingers without drawing attention to itself. From time to time he looks toward the river, visible in the distance as a thin, shining line, and though he does not stop to watch it for long, its presence is constant, a reminder of the source of life for the fields, for the village, for all that surrounds him. The sun climbs higher, and the light becomes stronger, casting shorter shadows beneath their feet, and the warmth begins to press more firmly against the skin, though still not overwhelming, only a steady increase that comes as it always does. A small group of birds moves across the sky, their wings catching the light as they pass, and for a brief moment their movement draws the eye upward, breaking the line of sight from the ground, before the gaze returns once again to the work below. The man continues, his body now fully settled into the rhythm of the day, no longer waking, no longer adjusting, but simply moving, repeating, continuing, and in this steady flow, the sense of time becomes softer, less defined. There is no urgency in his actions, no need to finish quickly, only the understanding that the work will be done as it always is, piece by piece, moment by moment, without strain, without resistance. The land itself seems to share in this calm, stretching out in quiet stillness, holding the warmth of the sun, supporting the slow movements of those who work upon it, and offering no interruption to the steady passage of the day. As the morning deepens, a subtle shift begins to form, not sudden, not sharp, but gradual, as the body becomes aware of the time that has passed, of the effort that has been given, and of the small need for rest that begins to rise gently within. The man slows his movement slightly, not stopping, but easing the pace, allowing his breath to settle more deeply, and he glances toward the others, noticing similar changes in their motion, the same quiet recognition of the morning's progress. There is no signal given, no command spoken, but slowly, naturally, the work begins to soften, the rhythm easing as the moment of rest approaches, just as it has on countless days before. The tools are placed gently upon the ground, not dropped, not hurried, but set down with care, and the man straightens his back, feeling the stretch of his muscles, the warmth that has settled into his body from the steady work. He takes a slow breath, deeper than before, letting the air fill his chest, and for a moment he stands still, his eyes moving across the land, taking in the quiet scene, the fields, the sky, the distant river, all unchanged, all steady. Nearby, others do the same, some sitting upon the ground, some remaining standing, but all entering into a brief pause, a moment of rest that is not long, but enough. The sun now sits higher in the sky, its light more direct, its warmth more present, and the air carries a stillness that feels slightly heavier, though not uncomfortable, only fuller. The van reaches for a small bundle he has brought with him, wrapped simply, containing a modest portion of food, and he opens it slowly, revealing what has been prepared, plain and familiar, yet enough to sustain him. He eats without haste, each bite taken calmly, without distraction, and there is no need for conversation, no need for movement beyond what is necessary, only the quiet act of nourishment. The sounds around him are soft, the low murmur of others eating, the occasional movement, the distant call of birds passing overhead, and beneath it all, the steady presence of the land itself, holding everything in a quiet balance. As he finishes, he drinks a small amount of water, cool against the warmth of the day, and he closes his eyes briefly, not in sleep, but in rest, allowing a short moment of stillness before the work begins again. And in this gentle pause, the day continues to unfold, slowly, steadily, without change, without interruption, as it has always done, and as it will again.
After the brief and quiet rest, the moment passes in a way that feels almost unmarked, as if it gently dissolves into the air, and without any clear beginning, the work begins again, not with urgency, not with reluctance, but with the same steady acceptance that has guided every part of the day. The man leans forward once more, reaching for his tool, his fingers closing around the familiar handle, and there is no hesitation in the motion, only a smooth return to what his body already knows, what it has done so many times before that it feels as natural as breathing. The soil, already softened in places, yields slightly more easily now, and each movement of the tool continues the quiet shaping of the land, turning, pressing, smoothing, in a rhythm that remains even and unbroken,
like a slow and steady current. The sun has risen higher still, and its warmth settles more firmly upon the shoulders and backs of the workers, no longer just a gentle touch, but a constant presence, though it is not resisted, only accepted, as one accepts the passing of time. The air grows a little drier, and the scent of earth becomes lighter, mingling now with the faint dryness of dust that lifts gently with each movement, though it never rises enough to disturb the calm, only enough to remind the senses of the ground beneath. Around him, the others return to their tasks in the same quiet way, their movements once again forming a shared rhythm, a quiet pattern that spreads across the field, each person part of a whole that moves together without needing to be directed. The sounds of work begin again, soft and steady, the light contact of tool against soil, the shifting of feet, the faint exhale of breath, all blending into a low and continuous presence that fills the space without overwhelming it. From time to time, a breeze moves across the land, not strong, but enough to bring a slight cooling against the skin, carrying with it the faint scent of the river, a reminder of water flowing somewhere beyond the fields, steady and unending. The man pauses briefly to wipe his hand across his forehead, not hurriedly, but with a slow and simple motion, and then he continues, his pace unchanged, his focus calm, his body moving in a way that feels both practiced and effortless. The sky above remains wide and open, a pale and endless blue, with only the occasional thin cloud drifting slowly, so slowly that its movement is almost unnoticed unless one watches for a long time. Time continues to pass in this quiet way, not counted, not measured, but felt through the body, through the gradual shift of light, the deepening warmth, the steady repetition of motion that carries the hours forward. The land beneath them begins to show the marks of their effort more clearly now, the lines more even, the surface more prepared, shaped by many hands working together in quiet coordination, though each person remains focused on their own small section. The man adjusts his stance slightly, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, allowing his muscles a moment of ease before continuing. And in this small adjustment, there is no interruption, only a gentle continuation. There is a stillness in his thoughts, not empty, but calm, as if the repetition of work has smoothed away the need for thinking, leaving only a quiet awareness of the present moment, of the tool, the soil, the light, the breath. Somewhere in the distance, a bird calls again, its voice clear but not sharp, and it fades quickly into the wide space of the sky, leaving behind the same soft quiet that filled the air before. The sun now stands high above, and its light falls more directly, casting shorter shadows that gather close to the feet, and the warmth settles more deeply into the ground, into the air, into the body itself. Yet even as the heat grows, the pace does not change. The rhythm remains steady, unhurried, and the work continues as it always does, shaped not by the clock, but by the quiet understanding of what must be done. The man takes another slow breath, deeper this time, feeling the air move through him, warm but steady, and he continues his movement, the tool rising and falling in a gentle, repeated motion. The field stretches out around him, not vast in a way that overwhelms, but wide enough to hold the quiet labor of many, and beyond it the line of the river remains visible, a constant presence that does not demand attention, but is always there. There is no need to look far ahead, no need to think of the end of the day, only the next movement, the next small section of soil, the next steady breath, and in this way the work becomes simple, manageable, calm. The others nearby move in much the same way, their bodies bent slightly forward, their hands steady, their pace even, and though they do not speak, there is a shared understanding that moves quietly among them. Occasionally, one may straighten for a moment, stretching their back, looking out across the land, and then returning again to the work, just as the man does, each small pause blending seamlessly into the larger rhythm. The sound of the river, though distant, seems to grow a little clearer at times, carried by the shifting breeze, a soft and continuous flow that exists beyond the field, beyond the workers, beyond the day itself. The man's hands, though used to the work, carry the signs of effort, the slight roughness of skin, the firmness that comes from repeated labor, and yet there is no discomfort in them, only familiarity. As the afternoon begins to take shape, though it is not marked by any clear line, only by the subtle shift of light and warmth, the pace of the work remains unchanged, steady and continuous. The sun begins almost imperceptibly to move past its highest point, and though the change is slow, it brings with it the promise of a softer light to come, a gradual easing that will arrive in its own time. The man continues, his movements as steady as before, his breath even, his mind quiet, and in this calm repetition the hours pass without resistance, without strain. There is no rush toward the end, no desire to hasten the day, only the quiet continuation of what has already begun, what has been done before, and what will be done again. And so the work carries on beneath the wide and open sky, beneath the steady sun, upon the quiet earth, guided by a rhythm that does not change, a rhythm that has always been there.
As the afternoon continues to unfold in its slow and quiet way, the light of the sun begins to soften ever so slightly, though the warmth still lingers across the land, resting gently on the earth, on the tools, on the steady forms of the workers who continue their labor without interruption. The man's movements remain calm and even, though there is now a subtle heaviness in his limbs, not sharp or uncomfortable, but simply a quiet reminder of the hours that have already passed and of the effort that has been given to the soil beneath his hands. He does not resist this feeling, nor does he give it much thought, allowing it instead to exist as part of the day, just as the warmth, the light, and the rhythm of work exist, all blending together into one continuous experience. The tool rises and falls with the same gentle consistency, its motion unchanged, its purpose clear, and the earth continues to respond in the same quiet way, shifting, settling, shaping itself under repeated care. Around him, the field carries the signs of progress more clearly now, the lines more defined, the surface more even, and though the change has come slowly, almost unnoticed in each passing moment, it has gathered into something visible, something real. A breeze moves across the land again, slightly longer this time, brushing lightly against his skin, carrying with it a faint coolness that feels soft and welcome, and for a moment the warmth of the sun seems to ease just a little. He pauses briefly, lifting his head, allowing the breeze to pass over him, his eyes moving across the horizon where the land meets the sky in a long, quiet line, unchanged and steady. In the distance, the Nile continues its slow movement, its surface now reflecting the brighter light of the afternoon, a gentle shimmer that shifts with the breeze, though always remaining calm. The man's gaze does not linger for long, and soon he returns once more to his work, stepping back into the familiar rhythm without hesitation, as if the pause had simply been another part of that rhythm, not a break from it. The sounds of the field remain soft and constant, the quiet work of many blending together into a low and steady presence, never rising, never falling, only continuing.
From time to time, the faint sound of voices drifts through the air, quiet exchanges between workers, simple and brief, and then the silence returns again, not empty, but full of the steady motion of the day. The sun begins its slow descent, though the change is so gradual that it is felt more than seen, a gentle shift in the angle of light, a soft lengthening of shadows that stretch just a little further across the ground. The man notices this change without thinking about it, his body aware in a quiet way, sensing the movement of the day as naturally as it senses breath or motion. And he continues, his pace still even, still unhurried. The earth beneath him feels slightly warmer now, holding the heat of the sun, and as his feet press into it, there is a sense of connection, a quiet understanding between the worker and the land, both part of the same steady cycle. A bird lands not far away, moving carefully across the ground, pausing, then moving again, its presence small and unintrusive, and after a moment it lifts once more into the air, disappearing into the wide sky. The man straightens again briefly, placing one hand against his lower back, easing the slight tension that has built there, and he takes a slow breath, deep and steady, before returning once more to the work. There is no sense of ending yet, no clear sign that the day is close to completion, only the slow and gentle passage of time, marked by light and warmth and the quiet rhythm of effort. The field continues to take shape under the hands of the workers, each small section adding to the whole, and though no single movement stands out, together they form something complete, something lasting. The sky begins to shift in tone, almost imperceptibly, the bright blue softening just a little, preparing for the later light that will come, though it is still some time away. The man's breathing remains steady, his movements consistent, and there is a kind of calm endurance within him, not forced, not strained, but natural, as though his body and the work have become one continuous motion. The others nearby continue in the same way, their forms moving slowly and steadily, each person part of the same quiet pattern, each action blending into the next. The breeze returns once more, softer now, carrying with it a hint of the cooling that will come later, though it is still light, still gentle, and it passes quickly, leaving the warmth behind once again. The man's hands move with practiced ease, the tool guided without effort, and the soil continues to shift beneath it, forming the lines and shapes that will soon be ready for planting. There is no rush to finish, no urgency in his pace, only the quiet continuation of what has already been done, what remains to be done, and what will always be done in the same steady way. The sun lowers a little more, and the shadows stretch further now, long and soft across the field, touching the edges of the worked land, reaching toward the unworked spaces beyond. The light takes on a slightly warmer tone, not yet the deep gold of evening, but softer than before, gentler on the eyes, spreading evenly across the land. The man pauses once more, just for a moment, lifting his gaze toward the sky, noticing the change in light, the quiet shift that signals the passing of the day, and then he returns again to his task. The rhythm continues, unchanged, unbroken, carrying him through the remaining hours of the afternoon, each movement as steady as the one before. And slowly, almost without notice, the day begins to lean toward its close, not with a sudden end, but with the same gentle, gradual motion that has shaped every part of it.
The light continues to soften as the afternoon slowly leans toward evening, and the warmth of the sun, though still present, begins to ease in a quiet and gradual way, settling into the earth rather than pressing down from above. And in this gentle change, the field takes on a calmer tone, as if the land itself is beginning to rest. The man's movements remain steady, though there is now a deeper sense of completion forming within each action, not because the work is finished, but because the day itself is beginning to draw inward, folding softly toward its close. He presses the tool into the soil once more, lifting and turning it with the same familiar motion, but there is a subtle slowing now, not deliberate, not forced, simply a natural easing that comes with the fading light. Around him, the other workers begin to show the same quiet shift, their movements becoming slightly less frequent, their pauses slightly longer, as if each person is gently preparing to step away from the rhythm that has carried them through the day. The shadows stretch further across the ground now, long and soft, reaching out from each figure, from each tool, from the small, uneven shapes of the worked earth, and they move slowly, almost unnoticed, as the sun lowers in the sky. A breeze passes through again, cooler than before, carrying with it a faint freshness that was not present earlier in the day, and it moves across the skin with a softness that feels calm and welcome. The man straightens his back once more, this time holding the position a little longer, his gaze drifting across the field, taking in the quiet signs of the day's work, the even lines, the turned soil, the subtle changes that have gathered over time. He does not measure what has been done, does not count or compare, but simply observes, allowing the sight to settle within him, a quiet acknowledgement of effort that does not need words. Nearby, one of the workers sets down their tool and steps back, not in a sudden way, but slowly, as if easing out of the rhythm rather than breaking from it, and this small action begins to ripple gently through the others. The man notices, not directly, but in the quiet awareness that passes between them, and after a few more steady motions, he too allows his tool to come to rest, placing it carefully upon the ground, where it will remain until the next day. For a moment he stands still, his arms relaxed at his sides, his breath slow and even, and there is a deep quiet in this stillness, a calm that feels different from the quiet of the morning, heavier, fuller, shaped by the hours that have passed. The sun now hangs lower in the sky, its light warmer, softer, spreading across the land in gentle tones of gold and pale amber, and the air begins to cool in a way that is subtle but clear. The sounds of the field begin to fade one by one as each worker steps away from their task, and the steady rhythm that once filled the space dissolves into a softer, quieter presence. The man bends slightly to lift his small bundle, now lighter than before, and he adjusts it in his hand with a simple motion, his body moving without thought, guided by habit. He takes a slow step away from the place where he has worked, his feet pressing lightly into the earth, and as he begins to walk, there is no sense of leaving something behind, only the quiet continuation of the day in a different form. Others begin to move as well, forming a loose and unspoken path back toward the village, their figures spreading out across the land, yet all moving in the same general direction, guided by the same quiet understanding. There is little conversation, only the occasional soft voice carried briefly on the air, and then gone again, leaving the calm undisturbed. The field behind them remains still, holding the marks of their labor, resting now under the lowering sun, and beyond it the Nile continues its slow and endless flow, unchanged by the coming and going of the day. As the man walks, the ground beneath his feet feels different, cooler now, less warmed by the sun, and the air carries a softness that was not there before, a quiet signal that evening is near. The sky begins to shift more noticeably, the blue deepening slightly, while the light near the horizon grows warmer, spreading outward in a slow and gentle fade. Birds move across the sky once more, returning in quiet arcs, their wings catching the last of the light, and their calls, though soft, carry a sense of closing, of returning, of rest.
The man's pace remains even, unhurried, and his body, though touched by the day's work, carries no tension, only a quiet heaviness that settles naturally, like the land settling after the sun has passed. The village comes into view again, its low shapes outlined softly against the warm light, the walls holding the last glow of the sun, and a sense of stillness rests over it, though it is not empty, only calm. Thin lines of smoke begin to rise from a few homes, drifting slowly upward, carrying the faint scent of evening fires being prepared, and the smell moves gently through the air, subtle and familiar. As he draws closer, the quiet sounds of the village begin to return, the soft movement of people, the low murmur of voices, the simple sounds of daily life continuing in a slower, more restful way. He reaches his home without ceremony, stepping inside briefly to place down what he carries, the interior now touched by the softer light of evening, shadows resting quietly along the walls. He does not remain inside for long, stepping out once more into the open air, where the light continues to fade, and the warmth of the day gives way to a gentle coolness. For a moment he stands near the entrance, looking out across the village, the fields beyond, the distant line of the river, all held together under the quiet sky. There is no need to think of tomorrow, no need to reflect deeply on the day that has passed, only a simple awareness of being here at this moment as the light slowly fades. And as the sun lowers further, moving quietly toward the edge of the land, the day begins to close in the same calm and steady way in which it began, without urgency, without change, simply continuing its endless cycle.
The sun lowers further, slipping gently toward the edge of the land, and its light becomes softer still, spreading across the village in long, quiet layers, touching the walls of the homes, the narrow paths between them, and the still figures of those who have returned from the fields. The man remains standing for a moment longer outside his home, his posture relaxed, his arms resting easily at his sides, and his gaze moving slowly across the familiar surroundings, not searching for anything, only observing what is already there. The air has cooled enough now that the warmth of the day feels distant, as though it has settled into the earth itself, leaving behind a gentle calm that rests lightly on the skin. And the breeze, when it comes, carries a softness that was not present before. Nearby, others move quietly through their own routines, some preparing food, some gathering small items, some simply sitting in stillness. And though each person follows their own path, there is a shared sense of slowing, a quiet transition from the effort of the day into the rest of the evening. A small fire is lit not far away, its flame low and steady, and a thin line of smoke rises into the dimming sky, carrying with it the faint scent of burning wood, warm and familiar, blending gently with the cooling air. The man steps slowly toward the water vessel once more, dipping his hands into the cool surface, letting it run over his fingers, his wrists, and then lifting it to his face, where it settles briefly before falling away, leaving behind a sense of quiet refreshment. He wipes his hands lightly against his linen, the fabric soft from use, and then moves toward the entrance of his home again, stepping inside as the light continues to fade. Inside, the room is dim, the soft glow of evening reaching in through the doorway, casting long and gentle shadows along the walls, and the air holds a calm stillness, undisturbed by the movements outside. He sits down slowly upon the woven mat, his body lowering with ease, and for a moment he remains still, his breath steady, his shoulders relaxed, allowing the quiet of the space to settle around him. There is no urgency to prepare the evening meal, no need to rush, only a steady unfolding of simple actions, and he reaches for the small items that will serve as his food, arranging them with slow and familiar movements. The meal is plain, much like the one from the morning, and he eats in silence,
each bite taken calmly, without distraction, without thought of anything beyond the simple act itself. Outside, the sounds of the village continue in a low and gentle way, voices soft, movements slow, and the occasional sound of something being placed or shifted, all blending together into a quiet presence that does not disturb the calm. As he eats, the light continues to fade, the soft gold of the sky deepening into a darker tone, and the first hints of evening begin to gather, not suddenly, but slowly, as they always do. When he finishes, he sets aside what remains, his movements unhurried, and he takes a small drink of water, letting it settle within him, cool and steady. For a moment he remained seated, his hands resting lightly on his knees, his gaze unfocused, and there is a quiet stillness in this pause, a gentle space between the actions of the day and the rest that is to come. Outside, the sky deepens further, the last light of the sun slipping away beyond the horizon, and the air grows slightly cooler, carrying with it the faint sounds of night beginning to form. The man rises slowly, stepping once more to the doorway, and as he looks out, the village appears softer now, the shapes less defined, the edges blending gently into the growing darkness. Above, the sky begins to reveal the first faint stars, small and distant, appearing one by one, not all at once, but gradually, as if the night itself is unfolding with quiet care. The fires in the village glow softly, their light low and steady, casting warm circles upon the ground, and the smoke that rises from them becomes less visible as it blends into the darkening sky. The sounds of the day have almost fully faded now, replaced by a deeper quiet, one that feels fuller, more settled, and within it there is a sense of rest that touches everything. The man steps back inside, the darkness now filling the room more completely, and he adjusts his place upon the woven mat, lying down slowly, his body easing into the surface beneath him. The linen cloth rests lightly over him, familiar and soft, and he shifts slightly to find a comfortable position, his movements small and unhurried. His breath remains steady, slow and even, and as he closes his eyes there is no lingering tension, no unrest, only the quiet presence of the day now past. Outside, the village settles further into silence, the fires dimming, the voices fading, until only the soft sounds of the night remain, distant and gentle. The river continues its slow movement beyond the fields, unseen now, but always present, its quiet flow unchanged by the passing of the day, unchanged by the coming of the night. The stars grow clearer above, filling the sky with a soft and distant light, and the air carries a stillness that feels complete, as though everything has come to rest. The man's body relaxes fully, the weight of the day settling into the calm of the night, and his breathing becomes deeper, slower, as sleep begins to take him gently. There is no sharp moment of ending, no clear line between waking and rest, only a gradual fading, a soft transition that comes as naturally as the rising of the sun. And in this quiet darkness, the cycle continues, unseen but steady, as the night holds the land in its calm embrace, preparing once more for the slow and gentle return of morning.
The night settles fully over the land, deep and quiet, wrapping the village, the fields, and the distant river in a calm darkness that feels soft rather than heavy, as if the world itself has taken a slow breath and chosen to rest. Inside the small home, the man lies still upon the woven mat, his body at ease, his breath slow and steady, and though his eyes are closed, there remains a faint awareness, a gentle drifting between wakefulness and sleep, where thoughts no longer form clearly, but instead fade into a quiet stillness. Outside, the air carries the subtle sounds of night, not loud, not sharp,
but soft and distant, the occasional movement of a small creature, the quiet whisper of wind brushing against the earth, and far beyond, the steady, unchanging flow of the Nile. The stars above continue to fill the sky, spreading across the darkness in countless small points of light, their presence calm and constant, unchanged by the passing of days, watching over the land in silence. Within the village, the fires have grown smaller now, their glow dim and gentle, casting only faint circles of light before settling into embers, and the thin trails of smoke have faded into the cool night air. The man shifts slightly in his rest, a small movement, almost unnoticeable, as his body settles deeper into comfort, and the linen cloth rises and falls softly with each breath he takes. Time moves forward, though it is not marked or measured, only felt in the deepening stillness, in the cooling air, in the quiet that becomes fuller as the night continues. There are no tasks now, no tools to lift, no soil to turn, only rest and the simple presence of being, held gently within the calm of darkness. At some point, without any clear moment of change, sleep comes more fully, not suddenly, but gradually, as if the body simply allows itself to drift further inward, carried by the steady rhythm of breath and the quiet absence of movement. The night continues in this way, unbroken, steady, peaceful, and beyond the village, the land stretches out in silence, the fields resting, the river flowing, the sky holding its quiet watch above. As the hours pass, the air grows cooler still, and a faint layer of moisture begins to settle lightly upon the ground, upon the surfaces of the homes, upon the leaves of the plants that rest quietly in the darkness. The stars slowly shift in the sky, their positions changing so gradually that it cannot be seen in a single moment, only understood over time as the night continues its slow journey. Within the home, the man remains still, his breath deep and even, his body fully at rest, and there is a sense of complete calm in this stillness, a quiet balance that needs nothing more. And then, far in the distance of time, though it comes gently and without force, the first hint of change begins to form again, almost too subtle to notice, as the night slowly begins to loosen its hold. The air shifts ever so slightly, carrying with it a faint difference, a softness that suggests the coming of morning, though the darkness still remains. The stars begin to lose a small part of their brightness, not disappearing, but fading just enough to make space for the light that will follow, and the horizon, though still dark, holds the faintest suggestion of change. Inside the home, the man remains asleep, unaware of these quiet movements of the world, his body still held in the gentle rhythm of rest, his breath steady and calm. The village remains silent, untouched by the first moments of the coming day, as if the land itself is taking its time, allowing the transition to happen slowly, without disturbance. The river continues its flow, unchanged, steady as always, moving through the darkness toward the light that will soon return, carrying with it the same quiet presence it has always held. The sky begins to soften at its edges, a very slight lifting of the darkness near the horizon, so faint that it could almost be imagined, and yet it grows, slowly and surely. The air holds a stillness that feels different now, not just the stillness of night, but the stillness before something new, something familiar, something that has happened countless times before. And as this gentle change continues, the cycle prepares to begin again, not with a sudden shift, not with any clear signal, but with the same slow and steady unfolding that has always guided the passing of time. The man's breath remains deep and even, his body still at rest, but within him there is the quiet beginning of waking, not yet formed, not yet present, but approaching in the same calm and patient way. The horizon grows slightly lighter, the darkness easing just enough to reveal the faintest line between earth and sky, and the stars continue to fade, one by one, as the light slowly gathers. The night does not end all at once, but gently steps aside, allowing the early morning to return, just as it always has, just as it always will. And in this quiet transition, the world begins again.
The first light of morning returns in the same gentle way it always has, slowly spreading across the horizon, soft and pale, touching the edge of the land without sound, without urgency, as if it is simply continuing something that was never truly paused. The darkness lifts gradually, not disappearing, but thinning, becoming lighter, allowing shapes to emerge once more from the quiet stillness of the night, and the village begins to take form again, its low walls and narrow paths appearing softly in the growing light. Inside the small home, the man remains still for a little while longer, his body resting in the final moments of sleep, his breath slow and even, as the calm of the night gently gives way to the quiet presence of a new day. The air is cool, holding on to the last traces of night, and there is a softness to it that feels calm and undisturbed, carrying with it the faint scent of earth and distant water. Outside, the first subtle sounds begin to return, not all at once, but slowly, as if the world itself is waking in careful steps, a distant movement, a soft shifting, the faint call of a bird carried lightly through the air. The light grows a little stronger, spreading further across the land, and it reaches the entrance of the home, slipping quietly inside, touching the floor, the walls, the woven mat where the man lies. He stirs gently, not suddenly, but with a slow awareness, his body beginning to shift as the rhythm of rest comes to a natural close, and his eyes open softly, adjusting to the dim but growing light. For a moment, he remains as he is, lying still, his gaze unfocused, his mind quiet, and there is no rush to rise, no need to move quickly, only a calm recognition that the day has begun again. He takes a slow breath, deeper than before, and then another, allowing the cool air to fill his chest, and with a small movement he shifts his body, preparing to sit. The woven mat beneath him feels firm and familiar, and as he lifts himself up, his movements are steady and unhurried, guided by habit rather than thought. He reaches for the linen cloth, wrapping himself in it in the same simple way, his hands moving with quiet certainty, each motion practiced, each step known. Outside, the light continues to grow, and the village begins to wake more fully, though still softly, still without noise, as other figures begin to emerge from their homes, moving slowly into the early morning. The man steps toward the doorway and out into the open air, where the coolness of the morning greets him once again, gentle and refreshing, carrying with it the quiet promise of the day ahead. The sky is pale now, a soft blend of light spreading upward, and the sun has not yet fully risen, though its presence is felt in the brightness that grows along the horizon. He walks toward the water vessel, dipping his hands into it as he did the day before, letting the cool water run across his skin, lifting it to his face and closing his eyes briefly as it touches him. The sensation is familiar, steady, and he lowers his hand slowly, letting the water fall away, leaving behind a quiet sense of wakefulness. Nearby, the sound of grain being ground begins again, the same soft and steady rhythm as before, and the faint smell of fresh flour rises into the morning air, subtle but comforting.
The man returns briefly inside his home, where a small portion of bread remains, and he takes it in his hands, breaking it apart slowly, eating without haste, each bite simple, each moment unhurried. The light continues to spread, and the shapes of the land become clearer, the outlines of the fields, the distant line of the Nile, all returning into view as the morning unfolds. When he finishes, he steps outside once more, the bread gone, the water settled within him, and he stands for a moment, looking out across the quiet village, the calm land, the slow and steady return of light. Others move nearby, following their own routines, each person beginning the day in much the same way, not identical, but similar enough that a shared rhythm forms naturally among them. There are no sudden movements, no loud voices, only the quiet continuation of life as it has always been, steady and unchanging. The man begins to walk once more along the familiar path that leads to the fields, his steps even, his pace unhurried, and the ground beneath him feels cool from the night, firm and steady. The sky grows brighter, the sun beginning to rise more clearly now, its light reaching further across the land, touching the tops of the homes, the edges of the fields, the slow surface of the river. Birds move through the air again, their wings catching the early light, and their calls, though soft, bring a sense of life to the quiet morning. The man continues forward, passing others who walk in the same direction, their movements calm, their presence steady, and though they may share a brief glance or a quiet word, there is no need for more. The path remains the same, worn and familiar, guiding them gently toward the place where the day's work will begin once again, just as it did before. The fields come into view, resting quietly under the early light, waiting without urgency, unchanged from the evening before, yet ready to receive the steady effort of the day. The man steps onto the land, his feet pressing lightly into the soil, and he moves toward his place, where the tools remain as they were left, resting quietly upon the ground. He bends slightly, reaching for one, lifting it into his hands, feeling once again its weight, its shape, its familiarity, and there is no need to adjust, no need to think. The day begins again in the same quiet way, not as something new, but as a continuation, a steady return to what has always been. And as the sun rises further into the sky, the rhythm of work resumes, calm and unbroken, carrying the man forward into another day that unfolds just like the last.
The tool settles once again into the man's hands as if it had never been set down, its weight familiar, its surface shaped by long use, and as he begins to move, the rhythm of the day returns without effort, quiet and steady, like a pattern that continues on its own. The soil beneath him holds the coolness of the early morning, softer now than it will be later, and each motion of the tool presses gently into it, turning it with a calm and even force, preparing the ground in the same careful way as before. The sun continues its slow rise, its light growing stronger but still gentle, spreading across the field in soft layers, touching the workers one by one, warming their shoulders, their arms, their backs, without yet becoming heavy. Around him the others move in much the same way, each person settling into their own pace, their own small section of land, and though they work side by side, there is a quiet independence in their motion, a shared rhythm that does not need to be guided. The sounds of the morning grow slightly more present now, though still calm, the soft contact of tools against soil, the shifting of feet, the occasional murmur of a voice carried briefly through the air before fading again. The man's breath falls into a steady pattern, rising and falling in time with his movements, and there is a sense of ease within this repetition, as if the body and the task are moving together without resistance. The sky above is clear and wide, the pale light of early morning slowly deepening into a brighter tone, and the horizon stretches quietly in all directions, unchanged and still. From time to time, the man shifts his stance, adjusting his footing on the earth, allowing his body to remain balanced and comfortable, and then continues without pause, his movements smooth and consistent. The soil begins to change under his work once again, small sections becoming even and prepared, the surface shaped by repeated care, and though the progress is slow, it is steady, building quietly over time. A bird passes overhead, its wings moving in a slow and even rhythm, and for a brief moment its shadow crosses the ground, soft and fleeting, before disappearing again into the open sky. The air carries a faint freshness still, though the warmth of the sun is beginning to grow, and the balance between coolness and heat shifts gently, almost without notice. The man's hands hold the tool firmly but without strain, his grip natural, his movements guided by familiarity rather than effort, and there is no sharpness in his motion, only a steady flow. Nearby, one of the workers pauses briefly, straightening their back, looking out across the field, and then returning again to the work, and this small pattern repeats quietly among them all, each person following their own rhythm within the shared space. The river remains visible in the distance, its surface reflecting the growing light, a thin, bright line that moves slowly through the land, always present, always unchanged. The man glances toward it for a moment, not stopping, only allowing his gaze to drift briefly before returning to the soil before him, where his work continues. The sounds of the village have faded now, replaced by the quiet openness of the field, and the morning feels settled, fully begun, no longer forming, but simply continuing. Time passes in this calm and unmarked way, the light growing stronger, the air warming, the rhythm of work deepening, and there is no need to measure it, no need to think beyond the present motion. The tool rises and falls again and again, each movement blending into the next, forming a continuous pattern that carries the man forward through the morning. The earth responds in the same quiet way, shifting, settling, holding the marks of effort, and becoming gradually more prepared with each passing moment. The sun climbs higher, and the shadows begin to shorten, drawing closer to the feet of the workers, soft and faint against the ground, and the warmth begins to settle more firmly upon the land. The man takes a slow breath, deeper now, feeling the change in the air, the growing presence of heat, though it is still gentle, still manageable, still part of the natural rhythm of the day. A breeze moves lightly across the field, carrying with it the faint scent of the river, cool and distant, and for a moment it softens the warmth, brushing gently against the skin, before fading again. The man continues, his pace unchanged, his focus calm, and there is a quiet steadiness within him that does not shift, no matter the passing of time or the movement of the sun. The others nearby continue in the same way, their forms moving slowly and evenly, their presence blending into the land itself, as if they are part of it rather than separate. The sky remains open and clear, the light now bright and full, and the morning deepens into something more complete, more settled, more fully formed. There is no sense of beginning now, no sense of anticipation, only the quiet continuation of work, the steady flow of motion that carries everything forward. The man's body moves without strain, though the effort is real, and there is a quiet strength in this repetition,
a calm endurance that does not call attention to itself. The soil beneath him grows more even, more prepared, and the small section he tends begins to reflect the care that has been given to it, though it remains simple, unchanged in its essence. The sun rises higher still, and the light becomes more direct, touching the ground with greater intensity, though still not harsh, only steady. The rhythm continues, unchanged, unbroken, carrying the man through the quiet hours of the morning, just as it did the day before and the day before that. And in this steady repetition, the day unfolds once more, not as something new, but as a continuation of everything that has already been.
The morning continues to settle into itself, becoming fuller and more defined as the sun rises higher into the open sky and its light grows more direct, resting steadily upon the land and all who move upon it, yet still without harshness, only a quiet firmness that deepens with time. The man's movements remain unchanged, calm and measured, as the tool in his hands rises and falls with a rhythm that feels almost separate from thought, as though his body has taken over completely, allowing his mind to rest in a quiet stillness. The soil beneath him responds in the same gentle way, turning slightly with each motion, shifting and settling into place, and though each change is small, almost unnoticeable on its own, together they form a gradual shaping of the land. Around him, the other workers continue their steady pace, each one focused on their own section, their movements blending together into a quiet pattern that stretches across the field, unbroken and calm. The air has warmed now, though it still holds a trace of the morning's coolness, a balance that lingers softly, and when a light breeze passes, it carries with it a sense of space, of openness, of something wide and unchanging. The man pauses for a brief moment, resting the tool lightly against the ground, and straightens his back, his eyes moving slowly across the field, taking in the quiet presence of the others, the steady work, the open sky above. There is no sense of urgency in this pause, no pressure to return quickly, only a natural moment of stillness, and after a slow breath, he lowers himself once again into the rhythm, lifting the tool and continuing as before. The sun climbs a little higher, and the shadows beneath the workers grow shorter still, drawing in close to their feet, soft and faint against the ground, almost disappearing under the brightness of the light. A faint sound of birds drift through the air, not loud, not sharp, but present enough to be noticed for a moment before it fades back into the quiet of the field. The man's hands maintain their steady grip, his fingers resting naturally against the worn surface of the tool, and there is no strain in them, only familiarity, a quiet understanding of what is needed. The earth beneath his feet feels slightly warmer now, holding the growing heat of the day, and as he shifts his stance, he can feel the difference, subtle but clear, a reminder of the passing hours. The river in the distance continues its slow movement, its surface catching the brighter light now, a soft shimmer that changes gently with the breeze, though always remaining calm. From time to time, the man's gaze drifts toward it, not with intention, but as a natural movement, a brief moment of looking before returning again to the soil before him. The sounds of work remain soft and steady, forming a quiet background that does not distract, but instead supports the rhythm of the day, a low and continuous presence that carries on without change. The sky remains clear, wide and open, its color deepening slightly as the sun rises, and there is a sense of stillness above, a calm that mirrors the steady motion below. The man continues, his body now fully settled into the work, his movements consistent, his breathing even, and there is a quiet ease within this repetition, a sense that everything is moving as it should.
The soil begins to show more clearly the signs of his effort, the surface becoming smoother, more even, shaped carefully through repeated motion. And though it remains simple, it holds the mark of steady care. A light breeze passes again, softer this time, and it brushes lightly against his skin, bringing a momentary sense of coolness before fading into the warm air. The others nearby follow similar patterns, their movements unhurried, their pace unchanged, and there is a shared calm among them, a quiet understanding that needs no words. Time continues to move forward in this gentle way, not marked by sudden changes, but by small shifts in light, in warmth, in the feeling of the air. And these changes come so slowly that they are felt more than seen. The man pauses again briefly, lifting his hand to wipe away a trace of moisture from his forehead, not in discomfort, but simply as part of the steady rhythm of the body at work. He takes a slow breath, deeper than before, and then returns to the motion, the tool rising and falling once more, continuing the quiet shaping of the land. The sun now stands a little higher, nearing the point where its warmth will begin to settle more deeply, though for now it remains steady and even, a constant presence in the sky. The field stretches out around him, its surface gradually changing under the care of many hands, and there is a quiet beauty in this slow transformation, though it is not something that draws attention, only something that exists. The man's body moves with calm endurance, each motion blending into the next, forming a continuous flow that carries him forward through the morning. There is no thought of how much has been done, no measure of progress, only the steady continuation of effort, moment by moment, breath by breath. The air grows a little warmer still, the balance shifting slowly, and the early signs of midday begin to form, though they are not yet fully present. The rhythm continues, unchanged and unbroken, holding the man within it as the day moves forward in its quiet and steady way. And in this calm repetition, the morning deepens, carrying him gently toward the next quiet pause that will come, just as it always does.
The morning gradually leans toward its middle, and though no clear line marks the change, the warmth of the sun begins to settle more firmly across the land, resting not just on the surface of the skin, but deeper, as if the air itself has grown thicker and more still. The man continues his steady work, the tool rising and falling with the same quiet rhythm, though now there is a slight heaviness in each movement, not sharp or troubling, but simply a natural shift that comes as the hours pass and the body continues its effort. The soil beneath him has lost much of its early coolness, and as he presses into it, he can feel the difference, a gentle warmth that has settled into the ground, holding the memory of the sun's steady presence. Around him, the others move in much the same way, their pace unchanged, though their movements carry the same subtle weight, a shared experience that passes quietly among them, without the need for words. The sky above remains wide and clear, though its brightness has deepened, the light now stronger, more direct, and the shadows that once stretched across the ground have drawn in close, becoming small and faint. A breeze passes, but it is lighter now, less frequent, and when it comes, it carries more warmth and coolness, brushing gently across the skin before fading into the stillness of the air. The man pauses for a brief moment, resting the tool upright against the ground, and he straightens slowly, his back easing into a more upright position as he takes a deeper breath, allowing the air to fill his chest. His gaze drifts outward across the field, taking in the quiet forms of the other workers, the steady movement, the unchanged pattern that stretches across the land, and for a moment he simply stands, still and calm. There is no sense of urgency in returning to the work, only a quiet understanding that he will,
and after a few slow breaths, he lowers himself once more, his hands finding the tool again without effort. The motion resumes, steady and familiar, and the rhythm continues as though it had never paused, blending seamlessly into the flow of the day. The sounds around him remain soft, though slightly more muted now, as if the warmth of the air has settled over them, softening their edges, and the quiet scraping of tools against soil continues in a low and steady tone. The river in the distance glimmers under the stronger light, its surface reflecting the brightness of the sky, and though it moves as it always has, its presence feels quieter now, as if even the water has slowed under the weight of the midday sun. The man's breathing deepens slightly, his chest rising and falling with a calm consistency, and though the effort of the work is present, it does not disturb the quiet rhythm that holds him. From time to time he shifts his stance, adjusting his footing on the warm earth, allowing his body to remain balanced, and then continues without pause, his movements smooth and unbroken. The soil continues to change under his hands, becoming more even, more prepared, though the progress remains gradual, built from countless small motions that pass without notice. A bird moves across the sky above, its wings steady, its path slow, and for a moment it casts a faint shadow upon the ground before disappearing into the brightness. The man's hands remain steady, his grip firm but relaxed, and there is no strain in his movements, only a quiet endurance that carries him forward. The warmth grows a little stronger still, though it does not overwhelm, only settles, becoming a constant presence that is accepted without resistance. The others nearby continue in the same way, their forms moving slowly, their actions measured, and there is a shared stillness among them, a quiet unity in their steady labor. Time passes in this calm and unmarked way, the light holding steady, the air warm and still, and the rhythm of work continuing without interruption. The man pauses once more, lifting his hand to his forehead, brushing away the light moisture that has formed there, and he takes a slow breath, allowing himself a brief moment of stillness. He looks again toward the river, its distant line steady and calm, and then returns his gaze to the soil before him, where the work continues. The tool rises and falls again and again, each motion blending into the next, forming a continuous flow that carries him through the late morning. The sky remains unchanged, open and clear, and the sun now stands high, its light steady and direct, holding the land in a quiet stillness. The field stretches around him, its surface gradually shaped by the work of many, and though each section is small, together they form a quiet whole. The man continues, his body moving with calm endurance, his breath steady, his mind quiet, and there is a sense of balance within this repetition, a steady flow that does not break. The air feels fuller now, warmer, and the subtle signs of midday begin to settle more clearly, though still without any sudden change. The rhythm remains unbroken, carrying him forward, just as it has since the first light of morning, and just as it will continue. And slowly, gently, the moment approaches when the work will ease once more, when the quiet pause of midday will arrive, just as it always does.
The sun now rests high above, nearly at its peak, and its light falls straight down upon the land, steady and full, holding everything in a quiet brightness that feels complete, as though the morning has reached its natural center. The man continues his work, though his movements have begun to slow just slightly, not in a way that interrupts the rhythm, but in a way that reflects the fullness of the hour, the warmth, the steady effort that has already been given. The air feels stiller now, the breeze less frequent, And when it does pass, it carries little coolness, only a soft movement that briefly touches the skin before fading into the warmth. The soil beneath his hands is warmer than before, and as the tool presses into it, there's a different feeling, not resistance, but a deeper firmness, shaped by the sun's presence over time. Around him, the others move with the same subtle change, their pace easing, their pauses growing slightly longer, as if each person quietly recognizes the moment without needing to speak it. The sounds of work soften as well, the steady rhythm becoming less constant, with small gaps forming between movements, and in those gaps, the quiet of the land becomes more noticeable. The man straightens slowly, resting the tool against the ground, and he takes a deeper breath, allowing the warm air to settle within him, his chest rising and falling in a slow and steady motion. He looks across the field, his gaze calm, taking in the quiet forms of the others, the stillness that is beginning to settle, and the unchanging line of the horizon beyond. There is no signal given, no moment announced, but the shift is clear in a quiet way as the work begins to ease, not ending but pausing, just as it has on countless days before. The man lowers himself gently to sit upon the ground, the earth warm beneath him, holding the heat of the sun, and he rests his hands lightly upon his knees, his body relaxed. Nearby, others do the same, some sitting, some remaining standing for a moment longer before easing down, and the field, once filled with steady motion, now holds a soft stillness. The tools lie where they have been placed, resting quietly upon the ground, their work paused, their presence unchanged. The sun remains high, its light steady, its warmth constant, and the air carries a calm weight that feels neither heavy nor light, but balanced. The man reaches for the small bundle he has brought, unwrapping it slowly, revealing the simple food within, and he begins to eat, his movements unhurried, each action calm and familiar. The food is plain, as it always is, yet it carries the quiet purpose of nourishment, and he eats without distraction, his attention resting gently in the moment. Around him, the others eat as well, their movements slow, their voices soft when they speak, though many remain silent, allowing the quiet to remain undisturbed. The sounds of the field have changed now, no longer the steady rhythm of work, but the softer presence of rest, the occasional movement, the faint murmur of voices, the distant call of a bird. The river continues its slow movement beyond the field, its surface bright under the midday sun, though its presence feels distant, almost blending into the light itself. The man takes a small drink of water, lifting it carefully, allowing the coolness to settle within him, a quiet contrast to the warmth of the air. He closes his eyes briefly, not in sleep but in rest, allowing a moment of stillness to pass, his breath slow, his body at ease. There is no need to hurry, no sense of time pressing forward, only the quiet presence of the moment, held gently between the work that has been done and the work that will come again. The sky remains clear, wide and open, and the sun holds its place above, though its slow movement has already begun, almost imperceptible, as it prepares to continue its path across the sky. The man finishes his meal and sets aside what remains, his movements calm, and he rests for a while longer, his hands still, his body relaxed against the warm earth. The others nearby remain in their own quiet states of rest, some looking out across the land, some lowering their heads slightly, some simply sitting without movement. The air holds a deep stillness now, fuller than before, shaped by the pause in activity, and within it there is a sense of calm that feels complete. Time passes gently in this way, unmarked, unmeasured, carried only by the slow movement of light and the steady presence of breath. The man opens his eyes again, his gaze soft, and he looks once more across the field, the land unchanged,
the quiet stillness holding. There is no clear moment when the rest will end, only a gradual return that will come as naturally as the pause itself, and for now, the stillness remains. And in this calm, balanced moment beneath the high sun, the day rests quietly, held between effort and continuation, just as it has always been.
The stillness of midday lingers for a quiet while longer, resting gently over the field, as if the land itself is taking a slow breath, holding it, and not yet ready to release it back into motion. The man remained seated upon the warm earth, his posture relaxed, his hands resting loosely upon his knees, and his gaze drifting softly across the land, without focusing on any single point, as though he is simply allowing the moment to exist without needing to shape it. Around him, the others share in this same quiet pause, their bodies still, their movements minimal, and though each person sits in their own place, there is a sense of quiet togetherness that stretches across the field, unspoken and calm. The sun holds its place high in the sky, its light steady and even, and the air carries a fullness that feels settled, neither shifting nor changing, only present. A faint breeze passes now and then, but it is light, almost hesitant, and it fades quickly, leaving behind the same warm stillness that rests over everything. The sounds are few, and those that remain are soft, the quiet rustle of fabric, the small movement of someone shifting their position, the distant and gentle call of a bird carried across the open space. The man takes a slow breath, deeper than before, allowing the warm air to fill his chest, and then releases it just as slowly, his body sinking a little more into the calm of the moment. There is no thought of time, no sense of how long he has been resting or how long he will remain, only the quiet presence of being, held gently between the work that has paused and the work that will return. Gradually, almost without notice, a subtle shift begins to form, not in the air, not in the light, but within the bodies of the workers themselves, a quiet awareness that the moment of rest is nearing its natural end. The man opens his eyes more fully, his gaze becoming clearer, and he looks once more across the field, the soil, the tools resting upon the ground, the steady shapes of the others. He does not move immediately, but there is a slight change in his posture, a quiet readiness that begins to form, as though his body is preparing to return to motion. Nearby, another worker shifts, placing their hands against the ground and rising slowly to stand, their movement calm and unhurried, and this simple action begins to ripple gently through the others. The man follows in his own time, placing his hands lightly upon the earth, feeling its warmth, and then lifting himself slowly to his feet, his body steady, his breath even. He stands for a moment, allowing his balance to settle, his gaze moving across the field once more, taking in the quiet scene that remains unchanged. The tools lie where they were left, and he steps toward his own, bending slightly to lift it, his hand closing around the familiar handle with ease. There is no sudden return to work, no sharp beginning, only a gentle continuation as the first movement begins again, the tool pressing into the soil with the same calm rhythm as before. Around him, the others do the same, their movements returning slowly, forming once again the quiet pattern that stretches across the field, unbroken and steady. The sun has begun its slow descent, though it remains high, and its light shifts ever so slightly, becoming softer, though still strong, and the air begins to lengthen just a little, almost too subtly to notice. The air remains warm, but there is a faint suggestion of change within it, a slight easing that hints at the hours to come, though it is still distant. The man continues his work, his movements steady,
his pace unhurried, and there is a quiet sense of return within him, as though he has simply stepped back into something that was always waiting. The soil beneath him responds in the same gentle way, shifting, settling, forming under the repeated motion, and the small section he tends begins once again to show the signs of his effort. The sounds of work return, soft and even, filling the field with a low and steady rhythm, not loud, not intrusive, only present. From time to time, the man adjusts his stance, shifting his weight, allowing his body to remain comfortable, and then continuing without pause, his movements smooth and consistent. The sky remains wide and clear, its brightness holding steady, though its tone begins to soften slightly, the change so gradual that it is felt more than seen. The river in the distance continues its slow and steady flow, its surface reflecting the light in a gentle shimmer, unchanged and calm. The man's breath falls once more into its steady pattern, rising and falling in quiet rhythm with his movements, and there is a sense of balance within him, a calm that does not shift. The others nearby move in the same way, their forms steady, their pace even, and there is a quiet unity in their shared labor, though no words are needed. Time begins to move forward again in this gentle and unmarked way, the pause now behind them, the work continuing, just as it always does.
The afternoon settles gently over the land once more, not as something new, but as a quiet continuation of all that has come before, and the light of the sun, though still strong, begins to soften at its edges, spreading across the field in a warmer, calmer tone. The man continues his work without interruption, his hands guiding the tool with steady familiarity, each motion blending into the next, forming a rhythm that feels endless in its calm repetition. The soil beneath him has grown warm from the long presence of the sun, and as he presses into it, there is a deeper sense of contact, a quiet firmness that holds beneath the surface, steady and unchanged. Around him, the other workers move in much the same way, their pace even, their bodies relaxed yet engaged, and there is a quiet harmony in their shared motion, as though the field itself is guiding them. The sounds of work return fully, though they remain soft, the steady contact of tool and earth, the shifting of feet, the quiet breath of effort, all forming a low and continuous presence. A light breeze moves across the field, slightly cooler now than before, carrying with it a faint hint of the river, and it brushes gently against the skin, bringing a small and welcome relief from the warmth. The man pauses briefly, lifting his head, allowing the breeze to pass over him, and his gaze drifts once more toward the distant line of water, where the Nile continues its slow and quiet journey. He does not linger long, and soon his attention returns to the soil before him, his hands resuming their steady motion, the tool rising and falling in the same calm rhythm. The sky above begins to show the earliest signs of change, the brightness softening slightly, the tone of the light warming, though the sun still holds its place well above the horizon. The shadows, once small and close, begin to stretch again, slowly lengthening across the ground, reaching outward in soft and quiet lines that move almost too slowly to notice. The man's breathing remains even, his movements consistent, and there is a quiet endurance within him, a steady strength that carries him forward without strain. From time to time, he adjusts his grip on the tool, his fingers shifting slightly along the worn handle and then settling again into their familiar place. The soil continues to change beneath his care, becoming more even, more prepared,
And though the progress is gradual, it is steady, building quietly over time. Nearby, one of the workers straightens for a moment, resting their hands upon their hips, looking out across the field, and then slowly returning once more to the task. The man follows a similar pattern, pausing now and then, not out of need, but as part of the natural rhythm of the body, allowing brief moments of stillness before continuing. The air carries a deeper calm now, shaped by the passage of the day, and there is a sense of quiet balance in everything, as though the land, the sky, and the workers all move together in the same gentle flow. The river remains a distant presence, its surface catching the softening light, a quiet shimmer that shifts with the breeze, though always remaining calm. The man's gaze drifts toward it once more, briefly, and then returns again to the soil, where his work continues without pause. The sun lowers a little further, and the warmth begins to ease, not suddenly, but gradually, allowing the air to soften, to cool just enough to be noticed. The shadows stretch longer now, reaching across the field, touching the edges of the worked land, and moving slowly with the passing light. The man's movements begin to slow slightly, not in a way that breaks the rhythm, but in a way that reflects the gentle winding down of the day, the quiet approach of evening. The others nearby show the same subtle change, their pace easing, their pauses lengthening, as the shared awareness of the day's progression moves quietly among them. The sounds of work soften once more, the steady rhythm becoming less constant, with small spaces of silence forming between movements, allowing the quiet of the land to rise again. The man presses the tool into the soil a few more times, each motion careful and steady, and then pauses, resting it lightly against the ground as he straightens his back. He takes a slow breath, deeper than before, feeling the air move through him, now slightly cooler, slightly softer, and he allows himself a moment of stillness. His eyes move across the field, taking in the quiet scene, the work that has been done, the steady presence of the others, the wide sky above. There is no need to measure what remains, no need to hurry, only the quiet understanding that the day is gently drawing toward its close. The sun continues its slow descent, its light growing warmer, deeper, and the sky begins to shift in tone, though the change is still soft, still gradual. The man lowers himself once more into motion, though now each movement carries a sense of nearing completion, a quiet closing that forms naturally without thought. And as the afternoon deepens, the rhythm of the day begins to soften once again, preparing gently for the stillness that will follow.
The light of the sun continues to soften as it lowers slowly across the sky, and the warmth that once rested firmly upon the land now begins to ease, spreading gently rather than pressing down, as though the day itself is beginning to relax. The man's movements grow slower, though they remain steady, each motion of the tool carrying a quiet sense of completion, as if the work is gently closing rather than stopping. The soil beneath him holds the memory of the day's heat, but the surface begins to cool slightly, and as his feet shift against it, there is a subtle difference, a softness returning where there had been warmth. Around him, the other workers follow the same quiet pattern, their movements easing, their pauses becoming longer, their bodies reflecting the gradual shift toward rest. The sounds of the field soften further, the steady rhythm of tools against soil becoming less frequent, with longer stretches of silence between each motion, and in those spaces the quiet of the land becomes more present. A breeze moves through again, cooler now, carrying with it a faint freshness that was absent earlier in the day,
and it passes gently across the skin, leaving behind a calm and subtle relief. The man straightens his back once more, resting the tool lightly upon the ground, and he takes a slow, deep breath, allowing the cooler air to settle within him. His gaze drifts across the field, taking in the quiet forms of the others, the lines of the soil, the distant shimmer of the river, all held together under the softening light. There is no sudden moment of ending, no clear signal, only a quiet understanding that moves gently among them, a shared sense that the day is nearing its close. The sun lowers further, and its light becomes warmer, casting a gentle glow across the land, touching the tops of the fields, the edges of the tools, the still figures of the workers. The shadows stretch long now, reaching far across the ground, soft and quiet, moving slowly as the light continues to change. The man lowers his tool one final time, pressing it into the soil with the same steady motion, and then he pauses, allowing the moment to settle. He places the tool carefully upon the ground, not hurriedly, but with a quiet intention, as though it belongs there, resting until it is needed again. For a moment he stands still, his arms relaxed, his breath slow and even, and there is a deeper stillness now, one that feels shaped by the entire day. Around him, the others begin to step away from their work, their movements slow and unhurried, and the field, once filled with steady motion, now begins to empty in a calm and quiet way. The man bends slightly, lifting his small bundle, adjusting it in his hand, and then he takes a step back from the place where he has worked. There is no sense of leaving something unfinished, no need to look back, only the quiet continuation of the day as it moves into its next phase. The path back toward the village forms naturally, as it always does, not marked but known, shaped by the repeated steps of many days, and the workers begin to follow it in a loose and gentle line. The man walks among them, his pace even, his body carrying the quiet weight of the day's effort, though it is not heavy, only present. The air continues to cool, and the warmth of the sun softens further, becoming a gentle glow that rests upon the land rather than pressing against it. The sky begins to change more clearly now, the blue deepening slightly, while near the horizon a warmer tone spreads outward, hinting at the coming evening. Birds move across the sky again, their shapes small against the wide expanse, their movements calm and unhurried as they return to their resting places. The man's gaze lifts briefly toward them, following their quiet path through the air, and then returns again to the ground before him, where each step carries him closer to the village. The fields behind them remain still, holding the marks of their work, resting now under the softening light, and beyond them the Nile continues its slow and endless flow. As the man walks, the ground beneath his feet feels cooler, the air softer, and there is a sense of gentle release in his body, as though the effort of the day is slowly settling into rest. The village comes into view once more, its low shapes outlined in the warm light of the setting sun, and thin lines of smoke begin to rise into the sky, drifting slowly upward. The faint scent of evening fires reaches him, soft and familiar, blending with the cool air and carrying with it a quiet sense of return. He continues forward, stepping into the space between the homes, where the sounds of the village begin to gather again, low voices, soft movements, the quiet continuation of life. There is no need to hurry, no need to speak, only the simple act of arriving, of stepping back into the place where the day will come to rest. And as the sun lowers further, nearing the edge of the horizon, the day gently prepares to close once more, just as it has done before.
The man walks quietly into the village as the light of the sun settles lower, spreading a warm and gentle glow across the mud brick walls, the narrow pathways, and the still figures moving slowly through the evening, each one returning in their own quiet way. The air now carries a softness that was not present before, a coolness that rests lightly against the skin, and the warmth of the day feels distant, as though it has settled into the earth and no longer presses upon the body. Thin trails of smoke rise from several homes, drifting upward in slow, uneven lines, and the faint scent of burning wood spreads gently through the air, blending with the natural smell of earth and dust. The man moves along the familiar path, his step steady, his pace unhurried, and though his body carries the memory of the day's labor, there is no strain in his movement, only a quiet heaviness that settles naturally. Around him, others follow similar paths, some carrying small bundles, some walking with empty hands, their faces calm, their voices low when they speak, and often there is no speech at all. The sounds of the village are soft and scattered, the quiet murmur of voices, the faint movement of hands preparing evening tasks, the occasional sound of something being set down or shifted gently. He reaches the entrance of his home and pauses briefly, not out of need, but as a natural slowing, and then steps inside, where the dim light of evening rests quietly along the walls. The interior is cool, holding on to the last traces of the day's earlier stillness, and the woven mat lies where it has always been, simple and familiar. He sets down what he carries with a small and careful motion, and then remains standing for a moment, his breath slow, his gaze soft, allowing the quiet of the space to settle around him. Outside, the light continues to fade, and the warm tones of the sky soften further, giving way to a deeper blue, and the first faint stars begin to appear above, small and distant. The man steps back outside, drawn gently by the fading light, and stands near the entrance once more, his eyes moving across the village, taking in the calm and steady presence of the evening. The sky above has begun to change, the brightness of the day giving way to deeper tones, the blue softening, the horizon glowing with a quiet warmth that slowly begins to recede. Nearby, a small fire flickers, its flame low and steady, and the light it casts moves gently across the ground, creating soft shadows that shift with the movement of the air. The man moves a few slow steps toward the water vessel, dipping his hands once more, letting the coolness settle over his skin, washing away the fine layer of dust from the day's work. He lifts the water to his face, closing his eyes briefly as it touches him, and then lowers his hands, the drops falling quietly back into the vessel or onto the ground below. There was no rush in his movements, no need to complete anything quickly, only the steady continuation of simple actions that bring the day toward its close. He returns inside once more, where the dimness has deepened, and begins to prepare his evening meal, arranging the small portions with calm and familiar care. The food is simple, as it has always been, and he eats slowly, each bite taken without distraction, without thought of anything beyond the moment itself. Outside, the sounds of the village continue in a low and gentle way, the quiet rhythm of evening life unfolding without urgency, each person moving through their own routine. The light continues to fade, and the warm tones of the sky soften further, giving way to a deeper blue, and the first faint stars begin to appear above, small and distant. The man finishes his meal and sets aside what remains, his movement slow, his posture relaxed, and he takes a small drink of water, letting it settle within him. For a moment he remains seated, his hands resting lightly, his breath steady, and there is a quiet stillness in this pause, a gentle space between the day's effort and the night's rest.
He rises slowly and steps once more to the doorway, looking out at the village as it continues to settle, the fires glowing softly, the voices fading, the movement becoming less and less. The sky deepens further, the stars growing clearer, spreading across the darkness, and the last light of the sun disappears beyond the horizon, leaving behind a calm and steady night. The air cools a little more, carrying with it the faint sounds of the night beginning to take shape, soft and distant, blending into the quiet. The man steps back inside and lowers himself onto the woven mat, his body easing into rest, his movements slow and unhurried. He adjusts the linen cloth lightly over himself, settling into a comfortable position, and his breath begins to slow further, deep and even. Outside, the village grows quieter still, the fires dimming, the sounds fading, until only the soft presence of night remains. The river continues its slow and endless flow beyond the fields, unseen but always present, steady and calm. The man's eyes close gently, and his body relaxes fully, the weight of the day settling into the stillness of the night. There is no clear moment of ending, only a gradual fading as the quiet of sleep takes him once more. And as the stars fill the sky above, the land rests again, held in the calm and steady embrace of night, waiting quietly for the slow return of morning.
The night deepens slowly, wrapping the village and the wide stretch of land in a calm darkness that feels soft and complete, as though everything has settled into its proper place without effort or resistance. Inside the small home, the man lies still upon the woven mat, his breathing slow and steady, rising and falling in a quiet rhythm that blends with the stillness around him, and his body rests fully, no longer carrying the movement of the day. Outside, the air has cooled further, and there is a gentle freshness that lingers close to the ground, touching the surfaces of the earth, the walls of the homes, and the silent paths that wind between them. The faint glow of the remaining fires softens as the embers settle, their light dim and warm, casting only the gentlest illumination before slowly fading into darkness. The sounds of the village have nearly disappeared, leaving behind only the quiet presence of the night, where even the smallest movement can be felt, though not heard in any clear way. Far beyond the homes, the Nile continues its steady movement, its surface now dark and unseen, yet always present, always flowing, unchanged by the stillness of the land around it. The stars above grow clearer as the sky deepens, spreading across the vast darkness in quiet patterns, their light distant and calm, untouched by the passing of days. Within this stillness, the man remains at rest, his body fully relaxed, his breath deep and even, and there is no sign of wakefulness, only the quiet continuation of sleep. Time passes gently, not measured, not marked, only felt through the subtle changes in the air, in the position of the stars, in the quiet rhythm of the night itself. At moments, a faint breeze moves through the village, brushing lightly against the walls and across the ground, carrying with it the coolness of the night, though it never disturbs the calm. The land rests as one, the fields, the homes, the paths, all held within the same quiet stillness, as if the world has paused, though it continues in its own slow and steady way. Inside the home, the man shifts slightly in his sleep, a small movement, barely noticeable, as his body settles more deeply into rest and then becomes still once again.
The hours pass without interruption, the night holding its quiet presence, and the stars move slowly across the sky, their paths steady and unchanging. There is no urgency in the passing of time, no need for it to move faster or slower, only the gentle continuation of the cycle that has always been. And then, far beyond the reach of immediate awareness, the first hint of change begins to form once more, so subtle that it could easily go unnoticed as the night slowly begins to loosen its hold. The air shifts ever so slightly, carrying a faint difference, a softness that suggests the coming of morning, though the darkness still remains. The stars begin to fade just a little, their brightness softening as the sky prepares to receive the light that will return, and the horizon holds the faintest trace of something new. Inside the home, the man remains asleep, his breathing steady, his body at ease, unaware of the quiet transition that is beginning to take shape beyond him. The village remains still, untouched by the earliest signs of the coming day, as if the land itself is allowing the change to unfold slowly, without disturbance. The river continues its slow and endless flow, moving through the darkness toward the light that will soon come, carrying with it the same calm presence it has always held. The sky begins to soften at its edges, a slight lifting of the darkness near the horizon, growing gradually, though still faint. The air holds a stillness that feels different now, not just the stillness of night, but the stillness before something begins again. And as this quiet change continues, the cycle prepares once more to return, not with a sudden shift, but with the same slow and gentle unfolding that has shaped every day before it. The man's breath remains deep and even, his body still resting, though within him the first faint stirrings of waking will soon begin. The horizon grows slightly lighter, the darkness easing just enough to reveal the faint line between earth and sky, and the stars continue to fade, one by one. The night does not end all at once, but gently gives way, allowing the early morning to return in its own time, just as it always has. And in this quiet transition, the world prepares to begin again.
The first light of morning returns once more, quiet and patient, spreading slowly along the horizon, touching the edge of the land with a pale and gentle glow, as though the night is being lifted away with careful hands. The darkness begins to soften, not all at once, but gradually, allowing shapes to emerge again, the outlines of the village, the low walls of the homes, the narrow paths that wind between them, all returning in a calm and steady way. Inside the small home, the man remains still for a few moments longer, his body resting in the final layers of sleep, his breath deep and even, rising and falling without effort. The air is cool, carrying the last traces of night, and there is a quiet stillness that feels fresh, untouched by the movement of the day. Outside, the first subtle sounds begin to form again, a distant shifting, a faint call carried through the air, not loud, not sharp, but enough to signal the quiet return of life. The light grows slightly stronger, spreading across the ground, reaching the entrance of the home and slipping gently inside, touching the woven mat, the walls, the still form of the man. He stirs slowly, not suddenly, but with a quiet awareness, his body beginning to shift as the rhythm of rest gives way to waking, and his eyes open softly, adjusting to the dim but growing light. For a moment he remains lying where he is, his gaze unfocused, his thoughts quiet, and there is no rush to rise, no need to move quickly.
He takes a slow breath, deeper than before, allowing the cool air to fill his chest, and then another, his body beginning to wake in a calm and steady way. The woven mat beneath him feels firm and familiar, and as he lifts himself into a sitting position, his movements are unhurried, guided by habit and ease. He reaches for the linen cloth, wrapping himself in the same simple manner, his hands moving with quiet certainty, each motion practiced, each step known. Outside, the light continues to spread, and the village begins to stir more clearly, though still softly, as others begin to wake and step into the morning air. The man steps toward the doorway and out into the open space, where the coolness of the early morning greets him once again, gentle and refreshing. The sky is pale, the sun not yet fully risen, but its presence is felt in the growing brightness that stretches along the horizon. He walks toward the water vessel, dipping his hands into the cool surface, letting it run across his fingers, his wrists, and then lifting it to his face, where he closes his eyes briefly as it touches him. The sensation is familiar, steady, and he lowers his hands slowly, letting the water fall away, leaving behind a quiet sense of wakefulness. Nearby, the sound of grain being ground begins once again, the same soft and steady rhythm, and the faint scent of fresh flour rises gently into the air. The man returns briefly inside, where a small portion of bread remains, and he takes it in his hands, breaking it slowly, eating without haste, each bite simple and calm. The light continues to grow, revealing more of the land, the distant line of the Nile, the open fields waiting quietly beyond the village. When he finishes, he steps outside once more, the bread gone, the water settled within him, and he stands for a moment, looking out across the quiet morning. Others move nearby, following their own routines, each person beginning the day in a similar way, forming a shared rhythm without needing to speak. There are no sudden sounds, no hurried movements, only the calm unfolding of another day, steady and unchanged. The man begins to walk once more along the familiar path toward the fields, his steps even, his pace unhurried, the ground beneath him still cool from the night. The sky grows brighter, the sun beginning to rise more clearly now, its light reaching further across the land, touching the tops of the homes, the edges of the fields, the distant water. Birds move through the air again, their wings catching the early light, their calls soft and gentle, adding to the quiet presence of the morning. The man continues forward, passing others who walk in the same direction, their movements calm, their presence steady, and though they may share a brief glance, there is little need for words. The path remains worn and familiar, guiding them toward the place where the day's work will begin once more, just as it always has. The fields come into view, resting under the early light, unchanged, waiting quietly, holding the memory of the work done the day before. The man steps onto the land, his feet pressing lightly into the soil, and he moves toward his place, where the tools remain, resting where they were left. He bends slightly, reaching down, lifting the tool into his hands, feeling its weight, its shape, its quiet familiarity. And without pause, without thought, the rhythm begins again.
The tool settles into motion once again, as if the brief stillness of the night had only been a pause in a much longer rhythm, and the man begins his work with the same calm and steady pace, his movements flowing without interruption. The soil beneath him holds a trace of the morning's coolness, and as the tool presses into it, there is a softness that makes each motion feel smooth and even, the earth yielding gently before settling again. The sun continues its slow rise, lifting higher into the sky, and its light spreads further across the land, touching the fields with a quiet warmth that grows little by little. Around him, the others move in much the same way,
their bodies settling into familiar patterns, each person working within their own space, yet all connected by the same steady rhythm. The sounds of the field begin to gather once more, soft and even, the light contact of tools against soil, the shifting of feet, the quiet breath of effort, all blending together into a calm and continuous presence. The air still carries a slight coolness, though it is beginning to fade, replaced slowly by the warmth that will build as the morning continues. The man's breath remains steady, rising and falling in quiet rhythm with his movements, and there is a sense of ease within him, a calm acceptance of the work that lies before him. From time to time, he adjusts his stance, shifting his weight slightly to remain balanced, and then continues without pause, his hands guiding the tool with quiet familiarity. The soil begins to change under his care, small sections becoming more even, more prepared, and though the progress is gradual, it is steady, building slowly over time. A bird passes overhead, its wings moving in a smooth and unhurried motion, and its shadow drifts briefly across the ground before disappearing. The sky above is clear and open, the light growing brighter, though still soft, and the horizon stretches quietly in all directions, unchanged and calm. The man's gaze remains mostly on the ground before him, though at times it drifts outward, briefly taking in the wider land, the distant river, the quiet presence of others working nearby. The Nile glimmers faintly in the distance, its surface reflecting the growing light, a steady and constant presence that flows without pause. The man continues, his movements unbroken, the tool rising and falling in a gentle, repeated motion, and there is no strain in his body, only a quiet endurance. The others nearby follow similar rhythms, their movements slow and even, their pace unchanged, and there is a shared stillness among them, even in motion. The air warms gradually, the coolness of early morning fading into a gentle warmth that rests lightly upon the skin, not yet strong, but steadily growing. The sounds of the village have now faded behind them, replaced fully by the openness of the field, and the morning feels settled, fully begun. Time passes in this calm and unmarked way, carried forward by the steady rhythm of work, the slow movement of the sun, and the quiet presence of breath. The man pauses briefly, resting the tool against the ground, and straightens his back, taking a slow breath, his eyes drifting across the field. He does not remain still for long, and soon returns to the motion, his hands finding the tool again, his body resuming the familiar rhythm without effort. The soil beneath him continues to shift, becoming smoother, more even, and the small section he tends begins to show the quiet signs of his care. A breeze moves lightly across the land, carrying with it a faint hint of the river, cool and distant, and it brushes gently against the skin before fading again. The sun rises higher, and the light becomes stronger, though still calm, and the shadows beneath the workers begin to shorten, drawing closer to their feet. The man's breath remains steady, his movements consistent, and there is a quiet balance within him, a sense that everything is moving as it should. The others continue in the same way, their forms steady, their pace even, and the field holds their presence in a quiet and unified rhythm. The sky remains unchanged, wide and clear, and the morning deepens further, moving gently toward the fullness that will come later. The man continues his work, his body moving with calm endurance, his hands steady, his breath even, and there is no thought beyond the present moment. The soil continues to take shape beneath his care, the lines forming gradually, the surface becoming more prepared, though always simple, always part of the land. The sun climbs higher still, and the warmth begins to settle more firmly, though it remains gentle, a quiet presence that grows with time. And so the rhythm continues, unbroken and calm, carrying the man forward through another morning, just as it has always done, just as it always will.
The morning continues to deepen in a quiet and steady way, and the light of the sun, now higher in the sky, begins to settle more firmly across the land, warming the soil, the air, and the steady forms of those who work upon it. The man moves with the same calm rhythm, his hands guiding the tool without effort, each motion blending into the next as though the work itself is carrying him forward rather than the other way around. The soil beneath him has begun to lose the last traces of its early coolness, and as the tool presses into it, there's a gentle firmness that was not there before, shaped by the growing warmth of the day. Around him, the other workers continue in much the same way, their movements evened and unhurried, their bodies settled into the quiet repetition that defines the morning. The sounds of the field remain soft, the steady contact of tools against earth, forming a low and continuous rhythm, one that does not demand attention but quietly fills the space. The air carries a gentle warmth now, no longer balanced with the coolness of dawn, but still not heavy, only present, resting lightly against the skin. The man pauses briefly, straightening his back and taking a slow breath, his chest rising and falling in a steady motion, and his gaze drifts across the field, taking in the quiet scene. He does not remain still for long, and soon he returns to the work, lowering himself once more into the familiar motion, his hands finding their place without thought. The tool rises and falls again, pressing into the soil, lifting, turning, repeating, and each movement contributes to the slow shaping of the land, though no single action stands apart. The sky above remains wide and open, its color deepening slightly as the sun climbs, and there is a sense of stillness in its vastness, a calm that stretches beyond the edges of sight. A bird crosses overhead, its wings moving steadily, and for a moment its shadow glides across the ground before fading into the brightness. The man's breathing remains even, his body steady, and there is a quiet endurance within him that does not waver no matter the passing of time. The river in the distance continues its slow and constant flow, its surface reflecting the stronger light now, a soft shimmer that moves gently with the breeze. From time to time, the man's gaze lifts toward it, not in distraction, but as a natural part of his awareness, before returning again to the soil before him. The warmth of the day grows gradually, settling more deeply into the air, though still without harshness, only a quiet increase that is felt more than noticed. The others nearby continue in the same way, their forms moving slowly, their pace unchanged, and there is a shared calm among them, a quiet unity that does not need to be spoken. The soil beneath the man's care becomes more even, more prepared, though always simple, always part of the land itself, shaped but not transformed. The sounds of work remain steady, though softened by the growing warmth, and the rhythm continues without interruption, carrying the morning forward. The man adjusts his stance slightly, shifting his weight, allowing his body to remain balanced, and then continues, his movements smooth and unbroken. A light breeze passes once more, though it is softer now, carrying less coolness, and it brushes lightly against the skin before fading into the still air. The sun climbs higher, and the shadows beneath the workers grow shorter still, drawing close to their feet, faint and quiet. The man pauses again for a brief moment, resting the tool against the ground, and takes a deeper breath, allowing the air to settle within him. He looks across the field, the quiet forms of the others, the open sky, the distant river, and then lowers himself once more into motion, continuing as before.
Time passes in this calm and unmarked way, the morning moving steadily toward its center, guided by the slow movement of light and the quiet rhythm of work. The soil continues to shift under his hands, the lines forming gradually, the surface becoming more prepared, though always simple and natural. The man's body moves with calm endurance, his breath steady, his mind quiet, and there is a sense of balance within him that does not change. The air grows warmer still, and the subtle signs of midday begin to form once more, though gently, without any sudden shift. The rhythm continues, unbroken and steady, carrying the man forward through the late morning, just as it has done before. And in this quiet repetition, the day unfolds once more, calm and unchanged, moving gently toward the stillness that will come again.
The late morning settles gently into its fuller form, and the sun, now standing high and steady, casts its light directly upon the land, filling the open space with a quiet brightness that feels complete and unbroken. The man continues his work with the same calm rhythm, though there is a slight heaviness beginning to settle into his movements, not sharp or uncomfortable, but simply a natural response to the passing hours and the steady effort of his body. The soil beneath him has grown warmer, and as the tool presses into it, there is a deeper firmness shaped by the sun's constant presence, and the earth responds with a quiet stillness. Around him, the other workers move in much the same way, their pace steady, though subtly eased, their bodies carrying the same quiet weight of the late morning. The air feels fuller now, warmer and more still, and the light breeze that once passed more freely has grown softer, less frequent, as though the air itself has settled. The sounds of the field continue, though they seem slightly muted, softened by the warmth, the steady rhythm of tools against soil continuing in a low and even tone. The man pauses, resting the tool against the ground, and straightens his back slowly, allowing his body to ease into a moment of stillness. He takes a deep breath, filling his chest with the warm air, and then releases it just as slowly, his gaze drifting outward across the field. The horizon remains unchanged, wide and open, the distant river a faint and steady line, glimmering under the strong light. He stands for a moment longer, not in rest alone, but in quiet awareness, and then gently returns to the work, his hands finding the tool again without effort. The motion resumes, steady and familiar, the tool rising and falling with the same quiet rhythm, blending seamlessly into the flow of the day. The sky above remains clear, its brightness deepening, and the shadows beneath the workers have now drawn in close, small and faint against the ground. A bird passes across the sky, its movement slow and even, and for a brief moment it breaks the stillness before fading into the distance. The man's breathing remains steady, though slightly deeper now, his chest rising and falling with a calm consistency that matches the pace of his work. From time to time he shifts his stance, adjusting his footing on the warm earth, allowing his body to remain balanced, and then continues without pause. The soil beneath his care continues to change, becoming smoother, more even, shaped gradually through repeated motion, and though the progress is quiet, it is certain. The others nearby continue in the same way, their forms steady, their movements unhurried, and there is a quiet unity among them, a shared rhythm that holds the field together. The sun remains high, its light steady and direct, and the warmth settles more deeply into the land, though still without harshness, only a quiet presence. The man pauses again briefly, lifting his forehead to his hand, brushing away a trace of moisture, and then lowers it once more, his movements calm and unhurried. He takes another slow breath, deeper this time, and then returns to the motion, the tool rising and falling once again. The air holds a deep stillness now, shaped by the warmth and the steady presence of the sun, and within it the sounds of work continue as a soft and constant rhythm. The river in the distance shimmers under the bright light, its surface reflecting the sky, and though it moves as it always has, its presence feels quiet and far away. The man's gaze drifts toward it for a brief moment, and then returns again to the soil, where his work continues. Time passes gently in this way, unmarked and calm, carried forward by the steady rhythm of motion and breath. The warmth grows slightly stronger still, and the subtle signs of midday begin to settle more clearly, though the change remains gradual, almost unnoticeable. The man's movements slow just a little more, though the rhythm remains unbroken, and there is a quiet understanding within him that the pause of midday is approaching once again. Around him the others show the same gentle shift, their pace easing, their pauses becoming slightly longer, though no one speaks of it. The sounds of work soften, small spaces of silence forming between each motion, allowing the stillness of the land to return. The man continues for a few moments longer, the tool rising and falling in steady repetition, and then pauses, resting it lightly against the ground. He straightens once more, his breath slow and even, his gaze calm, and he stands quietly beneath the high sun. And as the late morning gently gives way to the stillness of midday, the rhythm of the day begins to soften once again.
The moment of midday arrives once again without any clear beginning, settling gently over the field as the sun holds its highest place in the sky, its light steady and direct, filling the land with a quiet brightness that feels complete. The man stands still for a short while, his body at rest, his hands relaxed at his sides, and there is no urgency in his movement, only a calm awareness that the time for pause has come. Around him, the others slow in the same natural way, their motions easing, their tools coming to rest upon the ground, and the steady rhythm of work fades into a softer stillness. The air feels warm and full, carrying a quiet weight that rests gently upon the land, and even the faint breeze that once passed across the field has nearly disappeared, leaving behind a calm and settled atmosphere. The man lowers himself slowly to sit upon the earth, the ground warm beneath him, and he places his hands lightly upon his knees, his posture relaxed, his breath steady. Nearby, others do the same, some sitting quietly, some remaining still for a moment before easing down, and the field, once filled with motion, now rests in a shared silence. The tools lie where they have been set, their work paused, their presence unchanged, resting quietly upon the soil. The sun remains high, its light unbroken, casting only the faintest shadows beneath the workers, small and close, almost disappearing into the brightness. The man reaches for his small bundle, unwrapping it slowly, revealing the simple food within, and he begins to eat, his movements calm and unhurried. Each bite is taken without distraction, without thought beyond the moment, and the quiet act of eating becomes part of the stillness that surrounds him. Around him, the others eat as well, their
their movements slow, their voices low if they speak at all, and often the silence remains undisturbed. The sounds of the field have softened completely now, replaced by the quiet presence of rest, the occasional shift of position, the faint murmur of a distant voice, the soft call of a bird passing overhead. The river continues its slow movement beyond the field, its surface bright under the midday sun, though it feels distant, almost blending into the light itself. The man takes a small drink of water, lifting it carefully, allowing the coolness to settle within him, bringing a quiet contrast to the warmth of the air. He closes his eyes briefly, not in sleep but in rest, allowing a moment of stillness to pass, his breath slow and even, his body at ease. There is no need to hurry, no sense of time pressing forward, only the calm presence of the moment, held gently between the work that has paused and the work that will return again. The sky remains clear and wide, the sun steady above, and the light does not change quickly, only holds its quiet brightness across the land. The man finishes his meal and sets aside what remains, his hands moving slowly, his posture relaxed, and he remains seated for a while longer. Around him, the others rest in their own quiet ways, some looking out across the land, some lowering their heads slightly, some simply sitting without movement. The air holds a deep stillness, fuller than before, shaped by the absence of motion, and within it there is a sense of calm that feels complete. Time passes gently in this way, unmeasured and soft, carried only by the slow movement of light and the quiet rhythm of breath. The man opens his eyes again, his gaze soft, and he looks across the field, the land unchanged, the stillness holding. There is no clear moment when the rest will end, only a gradual shift that will come as naturally as the pause itself, and for now the quiet remains. The sun begins almost imperceptibly to move beyond its highest point, though the change is so slight it cannot yet be felt, only known in a distant way. The man takes a deeper breath, his chest rising slowly, and there is a subtle readiness within him, not yet action, but the quiet beginning of it. Around him, small movements begin to return, one worker adjusting their position, another placing their hands against the ground, preparing to stand. The stillness begins to loosen, gently and without interruption, as the moment of rest slowly gives way to the continuation of the day. And in this soft and gradual transition, the rhythm prepares to return once more.
The stillness of midday begins to ease in the quietest way, not breaking, but slowly unfolding, as small movements return to the field, one at a time, each one gentle and unhurried. The man shifts slightly where he sits, placing his hands against the warm earth, feeling its steady surface beneath his palms, and he remains there for a moment, as though allowing his body to prepare itself without rushing. Nearby, another worker rises slowly to their feet, their movement calm and deliberate, and this simple action seems to pass quietly through the others, as if carried by an unseen rhythm. The man follows in his own time, pressing gently against the ground and lifting himself upward, his body steady, his breath even, and he stands for a moment, letting his balance settle. The sun has begun its slow descent, though it still stands high and its light remains strong, yet there is a subtle change within it, a softness at the edges that hints at the hours to come. The air remains warm, though no longer still in the same way, and a faint breeze begins to move again, light and gentle, brushing softly across the field. The man steps toward his tool, which rests where it was placed, and he bends slightly, lifting it once more into his hands, the familiar weight settling naturally within his grip. There is no sharp beginning,
no sudden return, only a quiet continuation as he lowers the tool into the soil and begins again, the motion steady and calm. Around him, the others do the same, their movements returning slowly, forming once again the shared rhythm that stretches across the field, unbroken and even. The sounds of work begin to rise again, soft at first, the light contact of tools against earth, the shifting of feet, the quiet breath of effort, all blending into a low and steady presence. The soil beneath the man's hands feels warm, but slightly softened by the earlier rest, and as he works, it yields gently, responding to the repeated motion. The sky above remains wide and clear, though its brightness has begun to change ever so slightly, the tone of the light warming as the sun continues its slow path. The man's breathing falls once more into its steady rhythm, rising and falling in time with his movements, and there is a quiet ease within him as he returns to the work. From time to time, he adjusts his stance, shifting his weight upon the earth, allowing his body to remain comfortable, and then continues without pause. The river in the distance glimmers under the afternoon light, its surface reflecting the sky, though its presence remains quiet and far away. The man's gaze drifts toward it briefly, and then returns again to the soil before him where his work continues. The breeze moves lightly across the field now, carrying a faint coolness that was absent earlier, and it brushes gently against the skin before passing on. The sun lowers slightly, and the shadows begin to stretch once more, growing longer across the ground, though still soft and faint. The man's movements remain steady, though there is a subtle shift within them, a quiet awareness that the day is moving forward, though not yet nearing its end. The others nearby follow the same gentle rhythm, their form steady, their pace even, and the field holds their presence in a calm and unified pattern. The sounds of work continue, soft and steady, filling the space without overwhelming it, a quiet background that carries the afternoon forward. The soil continues to change beneath his care, becoming more even, more prepared, shaped gradually through repeated effort. The man pauses briefly, straightening his back, taking a slow breath, his gaze moving across the field, and then returns once more to the motion. The air grows slightly softer, the warmth easing just enough to be felt, and there is a sense of quiet balance returning to the land. The sun continues its slow descent, and the light warms further, spreading across the field in a gentle glow that deepens with time. The man's breathing falls once more into its steady rhythm, rising and falling in time with his movements, and there is a quiet ease within him as he returns to the work. From time to time, he adjusts his stance, shifting his weight upon the earth, allowing his body to remain comfortable, and then continues without pause. The river in the distance glimmers under the afternoon light, its surface reflecting the sky, though its presence remains quiet and far away. The man's gaze drifts toward it briefly, and then returns again to the soil before him, where his work continues. The breeze moves lightly across the field now, carrying a faint coolness that was absent earlier, and it brushes gently against the skin before passing on. The sun lowers slightly, and the shadows begin to stretch once more, growing longer across the ground, though still soft and faint. The man's movements remain steady, though there is a subtle shift within them, a quiet awareness that the day is moving forward, though not yet nearing its end. The others nearby follow the same gentle rhythm, their form steady, their pace even, and the field holds their presence in a calm and unified pattern.
The sounds of work continue, soft and steady, filling the space without overwhelming it, a quiet background that carries the afternoon forward. The soil continues to change beneath his care, becoming more even, more prepared, shaped gradually through repeated effort. The man pauses briefly, straightening his back, taking a slow breath, his gaze moving across the field, and then returns once more to the motion. The air grows slightly softer, the warmth easing just enough to be felt, and there is a sense of quiet balance returning to the land. The sun continues its slow descent, and the light warms further, spreading across the field in a gentle glow that deepens with time. The man continues his work, his body moving with calm endurance, his breath steady, his hands guiding the tool with quiet certainty. Time passes gently, unmarked, carried forward by the steady rhythm of motion and the slow movement of light. And in this quiet return, the afternoon unfolds once more, calm and unchanged, moving steadily toward the soft closing of the day.
The afternoon continues its slow and quiet unfolding, and the light of the sun, now gently descending, spreads across the land in a softer, warmer tone, touching the soil, the tools, and the steady forms of those who remain at work. The man moves with the same calm rhythm, though his motions have begun to ease, each movement carrying a quiet sense of nearing completion, as if the day itself is gradually releasing its hold. The soil beneath him is still warm, though the surface has begun to cool ever so slightly, and as his feet shift against it, there is a faint difference, subtle but present. Around him, the others follow similar patterns, their pace steady yet softened, their bodies reflecting the quiet transition that comes with the passing of the afternoon. The sounds of the field remain, but they have grown gentler, less constant, with small pauses forming between movements, allowing the quiet of the land to rise again. A breeze moves through, more noticeable now, carrying with it a soft coolness that brushes lightly across the skin, bringing a sense of calm relief after the warmth of the day. The man pauses briefly, resting the tool against the ground, and straightens his back, his chest rising slowly as he takes a deep and steady breath. His gaze drifts outward across the field, taking in the quiet presence of the others, the long lines of soil, the distant shimmer of the river, all held together under the warm light of the descending sun. He remains still for a moment, not out of necessity, but as part of the natural rhythm of the day, and then lowers himself once more into motion, continuing his work. The tool rises and falls again, though now more slowly, each movement measured and calm, as if guided by the gentle closing of the day rather than the beginning of effort. The sky above begins to show more visible signs of change, the brightness softening, the blue deepening, and near the horizon a warm glow begins to spread outward. The shadows stretch longer now, reaching across the field in soft and quiet lines, moving slowly with the lowering sun. The man's breathing remains even, though slightly deeper, his body carrying the quiet weight of the day's work, though without strain. From time to time, he adjusts the grip on the tool, his fingers shifting along the worn surface, and then settling once more into a familiar position. The soil continues to change beneath his care, though the work is nearing its natural pause, and the small section he tends reflects the steady effort that has been given. Nearby, another worker straightens, resting for a moment before continuing, and this pattern repeats quietly across the field, each person following their own gentle pace. The air grows cooler, though still warm, holding a balance that feels calm and settled, and the breeze moves more freely now, passing softly through the open space. The river remains in the distance, its surface reflecting the warm tones of the afternoon light,
a quiet and steady presence that continues without change. The man's gaze lifts briefly toward the horizon, where the light has begun to deepen, and then returns once more to the soil before him. The sun lowers further, and its light becomes richer, spreading across the land in tones that feel softer, more at ease, as though the day is preparing to rest. The man continues his work for a few more moments, the tool rising and falling with steady consistency, and then he pauses, resting it once more against the ground. He straightens fully now, his body easing into stillness, and he takes a slow breath, allowing the cooler air to settle within him. Around him, the others begin to slow as well, their movements becoming less frequent, their pauses longer, and the field begins to quiet once more. The sounds of work fade gradually, replaced by the soft presence of evening, the gentle movement of air, the distant calls that drift through the open space. The man lowers the tool one final time, placing it carefully upon the ground, not hurriedly, but with quiet intention, as though setting it into rest. He stands for a moment, his gaze moving across the field, taking in the quiet scene, the work that has been done, the steady presence of the land. There is no need to measure the day, no need to reflect, only the simple awareness that it is gently coming to its close. The sun continues its slow descent, nearing the horizon, and the light grows softer still, wrapping the field in a calm and quiet glow. The man steps back from his place, his body relaxed, his movements unhurried, and he begins to turn toward the path that will lead him back to the village. And as he takes his first steps away from the field, the day begins once more to fade gently into evening.
The path back to the village stretches quietly before him, just as it has on so many evenings before, worn gently into the earth by the steady passing of feet, and the man walks along it with calm and even steps, his body carrying the quiet memory of the day. The sun lowers slowly toward the horizon, its light soft and warm, spreading across the land in long and gentle layers, touching the fields, the distant river, and the quiet figures making their way home. The air feels different now, cooler, softer, and there is a sense of release within it, as though the warmth of the day has loosened its hold and settled into the earth. Around him, others walk in the same direction, their movements unhurried, their presence steady, and though they share the path, there is little need for words, only the quiet understanding of the day's end. The fields behind them rest in stillness once more, holding the marks of the work that has been done, and beyond them the Nile continues its slow and endless flow, unchanged, steady, and calm. The man's gaze drifts briefly toward the river, catching the reflection of the fading light upon its surface, a soft shimmer that moves gently before disappearing into the distance. He continues forward, his steps even, the ground beneath his feet cooling with each passing moment, and the gentle breeze moves more freely now, carrying with it the faint scent of water and earth. The village begins to take shape ahead, its low walls and narrow paths outlined in the warm glow of the setting sun, and thin lines of smoke rise slowly into the air, drifting upward and fading into the sky. As he draws closer, the quiet sounds of the village begin to gather once more, low voices, soft movements, the simple continuation of life as evening settles in. He enters the space between the homes, moving along the familiar path, and there is a calm sense of return, not marked by anything sudden, but felt in the quiet presence of what is known. The light continues to soften, the sky shifting gradually, the blue deepening while warm tones rest along the horizon, holding for a moment before slowly fading. The man reaches his home and pauses briefly at the entrance, not out of need, but as part of the natural slowing that comes with the end of the day. He steps inside, where the air is cool and still, and the dim light rests softly along the walls, and he sets down what he carries with a quiet and careful motion. For a moment he remains standing, his breath slow, his body at ease, allowing the stillness of the space to settle around him. Then he turns once more toward the doorway, stepping outside again as the last light of the sun begins to slip below the horizon. The sky above grows deeper, the first stars appearing faintly, scattered across the widening darkness, and the warmth of the day continues to fade into the coolness of night. Nearby, a small fire flickers, its light low and steady, casting soft shadows that move gently across the ground. The man walks toward the water vessel, dipping his hands into the cool surface, letting it run across his skin, washing away the fine dust of the day. He lifts the water to his face, closing his eyes briefly, and then lowers his hands, the drops falling quietly back. There is no urgency in his movements, only the calm continuation of small actions that bring the day to rest. He returns inside and prepares his simple evening meal, his hands moving with quiet familiarity, arranging what little he has without thought or distraction. He eats slowly, each bite steady, each moment unhurried, and outside the village settles into its quiet rhythm, the sounds soft and scattered. The light fades completely now, the horizon darkening, and the sky fills with more stars, clear and steady, spreading across the vast stillness above. When he finishes, he sets aside what remains and takes a small drink of water, letting the coolness settle within him. He sits for a moment in silence, his hands resting lightly, his breath slow and even, and there is a quiet balance within him, shaped by the steady passing of the day. Outside, the sounds grow fewer, the voices fading, the fires dimming, and the village begins to rest. The man rises slowly and steps once more to the doorway, looking out into the night, where the land lies still under the soft light of the stars. The Nile continues its unseen journey beyond the fields, moving quietly through the darkness, just as it always has, just as it always will. The air is cool now, carrying the faintest sounds of the night, subtle and distant, blending into the stillness. He steps back inside and lowers himself onto the woven mat, his body easing into rest, his movements slow and gentle. He adjusts the linen cloth around him, settling into a comfortable position, and his breath begins to deepen, steady and calm. There is no thought of tomorrow, no need to look ahead, only the quiet presence of this moment, slowly fading into rest. Outside, the village grows still, the last movements fading, the fires dimming to soft embers, and the night settles fully over the land. The man's eyes close gently, and his body relaxes completely, the weight of the day dissolving into the calm of sleep. The stars remain above, quiet and distant, the river continues its steady flow, and the land rests in a silence that feels endless and complete. And in this stillness, the rhythm remains, unseen but unbroken, waiting quietly for the slow return of morning.